Hey, hi, everybody. We're here at Explore Yoga Health, and my name's Shivani. I'm the creator of Explore Yoga Health, and I came up with it really because I noticed that there's a lot of idealism around the whole concept of yoga and maybe even health, and was wanting to encourage people to explore new ideas. And so today, I have a guest with me who has some really valid points that I've grown and really appreciated hearing from. My guest's name is Chandika, and I'm going to let her
Hey,
introduce herself.
hi, my name is Chandika, and thank you for having me. I've known Shivani for a long time, so it's really exciting to get to be a part of this as you start your new endeavors.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about you. Our topic today is mastering Shavasana. So everybody's probably going to be scratching their head a little bit about what that's all about. But tell us a little bit about you and why I would invite you on as my expert to talk to me about this.
Absolutely. So this topic has been very near and dear to my heart for a long time. I think I've shared it with you, and it's even evolved a little bit over the years. But as you know, I love going to yoga classes, and I love just the exercises. Even when I was like a young teenager, I enjoyed like doing the early ones that would come on in the morning and you'd have to, pop in the VHS tape to record, working out at the beach. Or sometimes I'd get to tag along with a parent or one of my friends' moms to aerobics. So I always loved the movement. And then I loved yoga when I started doing it and going to regular classes. And so that has evolved and grown and changed, which we can of course dive into. But I have become a yoga instructor. I still love also just to take yoga classes, and I also teach the art of ascension as taught by the Ashayas, and it's teaches meditative tools that help you draw the mind inward, along with what we could call a mindfulness practice with your eyes open.
Awesome. So we are definitely going to talk more about that as mm, the interview goes on, the art of ascension, that is. But let's hit a little bit more on the yoga experience that you've had.
Absolutely.
Because again, we're talking Shavasana and what's that all about? Like,
Right. And you and I have had a lot of conversations about that because I've even taught. I think you were the first person that got me out of my bubble that I needed to be teaching. I was like, no, I don't teach yoga. I just do yoga. Like, okay, we're in a small town. Nobody here has any yoga, and I'm going out of town and you're taking my classes. And so once I ripped the band-aid off, I realized how much I had to offer as a teacher. But so when I first started yoga, I'll just briefly share. I was a direct service social worker downtown Seattle, the largest women's shelter in a large city. And it's a drop in shelter for homeless, somebody maybe who just experienced a crisis, losing their home, or domestic violence, or brutally raped. I mean, all kinds of things that is just hard to okay, I'm off at 5 o'clock and just leave that at the doorstep. So I started to figure out, well, I don't want to, go and find myself at a crisis shelter. So what kind of things can I do to start releasing stress? And so I started off going to a yoga class at the downtown, I think it's the YWCA. Yes,
mm,
YWCA, downtown Seattle. And it's just was one of the coolest, largest buildings and really fun to do a yoga class. And I got a lot out of it. But one of the things that I experienced on my journey that is really funny that now I teach meditation tools is I'm also a very forward, bold kind of person. And so if something doesn't really appeal to me or I don't see the point, I've even will expose my own ignorance. So at the end of the class, she was like, okay, and now we're going to do Shavasana, corpse resting pose. And I was just like, I don't have time for that. And I even had got a couple of my friends to go with me and sign up. I was like, come on, we gotta go. Come on. So we did leave. And then literally this big, huge door would just slam on the way out. So all the people doing their Shavasana got to have that person weeks in a row. And then one of my friends was like, "Can we just stay for the last pose? I don't think it's very long. I think that we do have time for it." I mean, literally sometimes I was going to like hit and have a drink at happy hour. She's like, I think we could fit it into the night to just stay for a minute with our eyes closed. But I so had entrenched in my mind that I needed to be working out. I'm here to burn calories. I need to get this stress out, and I don't have time to be taking a nap on a mat. I need to be, moving. And so that's where I was at in the point of my life that this was a waste of my time to be sitting with my eyes closed.
It's so interesting because I know that everybody's different in the way they experience it, but me being more like a couch potato, even though I was always very thin, I was always a couch potato. It was always so hard to get me moving. That was one of the things that I loved most about the yoga classes is that it ended with a nap. But I think maybe only once did I really have a very deep experience, and I also remember sharing with people, and they were like, "Huh, that's weird. I don't, like the rest was so deep, and like everything was. I was able to turn off everything and just really have this very strong connection with an inner part of myself, and it was always something that I
Yeah.
wanted, and I wanted it, and I wanted it again, but it never
How do you get
happened.
there?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
never happened again. So
I did
just kinda
have
interesting. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I did have a couple shavasana, and I grew in my own way for sure. But I'm going to share too that there's a lot faster when you get true instruction on how to do this posture and this pose. And that's why every single yoga class ends with shavasana. But number one, I was going to say too, when I first heard about yoga, it took me years to go try it because I really felt that it was exercise for skinny people, not people that needed to burn calories. When I finally did it, I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is actually hard work. You can really." Then I was sold. But for years, I wouldn't try it because it seemed to like, yeah, people who just like, okay, well, some of us have calories to burn. But the other thing too, I was going to say is I had a couple when I did start doing shavasana, even before I learned my practice. I did have a couple experiences, and one's coming to mind where I ran and told the yoga teacher afterwards won't I was like, "I won't ever do that again, make that mistake," because she looked at me like I was a big, huge weirdo. So awkward and embarrassing. I think I was just, like, excited. I was like, "Wow," I can't even remember what happened. It was like I felt light and then that it was just, "Oh my gosh, it really is," and then but she was like, "Oh." Yeah.
And that's the thing that, you really touched me when you and I were talking about you becoming a yoga teacher possibly, that you have some really great perspectives on the teacher's ability to connect with this posture, and, those were the things that were like very meaningful for me because at that time I had already had now a practice that helped me to utilize this posture way more, like leading me to that
Yeah.
one peak experience much easier. But I knew that a lot of my students like they just didn't have. I don't even know if they would have the patience for it. And you kind of gave me some feedback. So I was wondering if you might have some things to share with other yoga teachers out there that might be like, huh, these guys are talking nonsense.
Well, I don't yeah, there's lots of ways to say it, and I'm gonna start off with a little bit more of a blunt way to say it, that it's difficult to teach something if you don't have the instruction of doing it or you don't have the practice of doing it. And so often in our world, this modern world, we take something from the ancient times and we bring it into this life and it helps us. But when we're missing the true essence of it, we're not getting very much. We could get a lot more. And that many people that are yoga teachers and perhaps very good at so many postures that I'll never be able to do, but they haven't had the proper instruction to do the eyes closed time. And we're in an era now where it used to be like you would rent a CD at meditation, the section in the library or go buy a CD. But now people are like, oh yeah, I meditate. I've got the app. Well, guess what, folks? You don't have proper instruction with the modern app. And it really doesn't have to be this arduous, difficult thing where you have to lie there because perhaps you're too embarrassed to run out of the room like I did. Or maybe it's just hard for you to struggle with those thoughts that they don't have to be the longest 2 minutes of your life to be in a resting pose with people, that it really can be easy and beautiful. But it does take that instruction. And maybe you've got all the other postures down but haven't quite got the eyes closed down. And there's a lot of ways out there, but I know for we both learn the same practice. It's a 2.5 day commitment. And that's about what it takes for anything. You don't go master headstand, most of us, or a new posture that you've never done before with a 2-minute tutorial. That's just not usually how life works. I think about when I learned to ride a bicycle as a kid. I practiced. When I learned to ride my skates, it was like, well, go out and practice. And I sat there and fell and up and down. And then next thing you know how to roller skate.
Mhm.
But it takes your own practice to be able to give that without having your uncomfortability.
Yeah, and so that's kind of where I was at, is I had my practice, but I was still nervous to challenge
Oh,
my students. So I'm glad that because I wanted you to talk about that part. But then when you challenged me to challenge my students, one of the first things we did was turn off music while we were doing postures.
yes.
And
Yes.
that was so hard for them. They were like, "What?" I mean, I it was so much more comfortable when you let me, like, just listen to the music. I could totally
Mhm.
zone out and all of those kind of stuffs. And then I explained, there's value in, uh, like, utilizing your mental power as you're moving through your body, bringing your
Yes.
awareness to your body.
And so, but you did it pretty easily because you have your own practice. So you were able to hold the space. But isn't it interesting that we're so trained that sitting with my own source, my own connection, my own true essence is not as valuable as playing recorded music from a speaker?
Yeah, and that the ultimate goal of what many of them thought that the goal was to go and zone out, like, become less aware. And essentially everything about yoga and the ancient traditions, is becoming more conscious. So it was kind of a very interesting revelation for me, is that, like, how many people just want to zone, but not
Right.
not really connect with themselves.
Right. Which I would just offer too that if you haven't actually lined up and learned a course, you're not really qualified to know what you're doing when you close your eyes. Any amount of eyes closed time is going to be great. But if we're just coming from that surface of the mind, I would just offer people to find a practice because there may be times where you're releasing stress. All kinds of different things can happen. But yes, you don't need to just play music and tap out and become a marshmallow. That's not the goal of life. I'm thinking no thoughts. I've now arrived to my Zen point. And that's also part of the dangers of picking up these really arduous, hard workout things. Like, I mean, I love hot yoga, but even that, like if I'm pushing and pushing and pushing myself to get to a point of just writing off endorphins where I've in the zone, that can be a little bit of a slippery slope if I have to do that all the time to get there. There's a much easier way.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. And I think that, again, the points that you're bringing up, is it's great for, like, the movement, but really it all starts in that ability to sit in, like, just sit with yourself in silence, where you're not
Right.
moving at all, like, you're going to be 100% relaxed. And again, this is what, like, a lot of people like to go to Shavasana to zone out, but they could be utilizing that time to become more connected, more more powerful in their
Hmm.
times when they're up and they're moving,
Hmm.
more skilled in their ability to deal with stress, all those
But
things.
even the zone out would be a step above where I was when I first started, that I
That's
didn't have time to sit around. So think of
Well, I
it
mean,
that
that
way.
one is debatable, because it's hard to say. Like, if you're just zoning and not using anything, maybe getting up and walking out would have been a better choice.
I don't I just still hear the clunk behind me. Well, nothing I can do it just like after like the third time. But But yeah, that's true. That's where I think just having the proper instruction. I will say for myself, it is interesting to notice because as you know, I move around a lot. And one of the things that I love to do is just pop into yoga classes in different places. So, you just get all kinds of random teachers. But I've definitely had the experience where I can tell the instructor is very nervous about doing this posture. And they'll turn up the music. I've heard focus on the words, focus on the words from your boyfriend's country song. Okay, written about you probably, but or just the panic or the nervousness or just how much effort that when you really just line up with the practice, all it just doesn't need to be so difficult.
Mhm. Yeah, I
That's
think
the part.
you and I had talked about once. I had audited or I went to a yoga class, and in that the teacher turned on the music and was like, "Okay, and I'm gonna leave, so you guys have fun with that, and whenever you're done, just do
See
whatever you're
yourself
gonna
out.
do."
That's
Yeah.
a very common way to end a lot of classes. So now we're all done, but take this time for yourself.
Hmm.
And they'll see you in the lobby texting or like, so it's the most important posture, but yet you don't have 60, 90 seconds to give to it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, where are we getting this? It's the most important posture, like kind of thought. I know that I
That's a
have
good
read it
question.
in some different places, but you touched on it like right away.
Well, it is actually put out in a lot of yoga classes that people will verbalize and say that it's the most important posture that you can give yourself. Not all the time, but sometimes. Um, but it's not really treated that way. And then we also know, if you go back to the ancient lineage, that the postures are designed to move the stress and move your body to prepare you to then have that connection point to your own consciousness. And if you don't have a practice that's giving you one deep rest, deeper rest than sleep, that's healing for the body, you're going to be stressed out. You're also not going to be able to be in a clear place to experience the truth, your own connection. You think about like a tree. If the tree has no connection to its roots and to its source, it's going to wither and die.
Yeah, so awesome because that's exactly the same. I didn't say much about it in the beginning, but I'm also training in Ayurveda, and that's the biggest part. Like, if you can't connect with yourself, then essentially all of your choices need to be something more scripted. But ideally, we would be so in tune with our own inner intelligence that we would know exactly what to put in our mouth because everything would be life
Right.
giving. You know.
Instead of just replaying our same old program over and over, and we get to 50 or 60 years old and we're just on complete autopilot and no actual connection to our bodies, or, well, I'm supposed to eat at this time or I'm not, or, and then everything always changes with the rules, so.
Exactly. What professional is saying what about what we should eat or when we should eat and how much water
and
to drink.
and just not having the deep rest that your body needs. And there's a reason why your body needs that deep rest. The emotional, the physical, all of it is all connected.
So I
Absolutely.
don't know if you're quite ready yet, but do you want to talk
Yes,
about how somebody could, now that we've talked or hopefully opened their minds to the possibility that they could make Shavasana really, really comfortable or maybe even really utilize the whole power behind that posture? How can they like do this
absolutely.
easier?
So, if you're somebody who is perhaps like a person like I was, that was looking for some kind of, lifeline to help you get through life, to deal with a lot of stress. I don't know many people who don't have some stress in life with their family or driving in traffic or your job, or perhaps you even just have a desire for, to grow a little bit beyond where you're at today. There is a way, and that's what we teach. Over, I say we because I always teach it with two teachers, and you also, I know, teach this practice too. But it's a first fear course, and literally you are taught tools that do have an ancient lineage. It's not important if you value that or recognize it. It's not important that you believe in it. What is important that you just take the time to actually learn these tools and then practice them and see if they work in your life. And so, what I called this, ultimately, my first thought was like, this is the true master your Shavasana. Take 2.5 days, learn how to close your eyes, and not only will you be able to go much further than your 2 or 3 minutes, I see people who feel that they can never sit for more than 5 minutes, and that's just not the case. It's often taught over a weekend. So by Sunday, it's just a different human being that's sitting before me. Not only have they've already begun to fill up with the deep rest, and I see the lights come back in the eyes and the brightness, you just feel more optimistic, if you will. If you're really tired and stressed out and you go take a big nap or have a good night's rest, you're like, oh my gosh, I think I can do this. Maybe this isn't so big and horrible as yesterday. Well, that's what begins to happen when we learn how to have a practice that we can dip into every night. And yeah, you got to come in person. We don't teach the techniques online. I'm sorry, a lot of things are really valuable online, and yet we're finding that a lot of things just aren't. So it's an ancient lineage. We teach it with two teachers in person. You get four techniques. And what I've experienced is that anybody who does this course afterwards, I remember being in a yoga class that you were teaching, and I was one of the students, and you're like, yeah, after they do the first sphere, Shavasana, you can just tell. People aren't having that same like, oh my God, gotta lie here, close my eyes in front of strangers for 2 whole minutes. It's going to change your experience of life from the inside out.
Yeah, in fact, many of my students that did know how to use this practice, they would be like, "No, come on, can't you just make it longer?
Why
We
does
did
she
all
end it
that
so
movement," you know?
Exactly. Absolutely. And then what's happening though, when you're taking that time to actually rest, is then you're more present and effective. Not only is your body going to heal up faster, but when we're not running the little hamster wheel of thoughts with our mind, we're not tiring our bodies out. And I even had the experience I'll share briefly too, is I did a lot of yoga classes every single week. And I think I'd been probably, let's see, 2008 is when I learned to ascend. So I'd been doing, 5, 6 classes a week, and that adds up. There's 52 weeks in a year. And after 7, 8 years, you know, that's a lot of yoga classes. Well, I also had a very stiff body. I'd had a lot of childhood experiences. I also was just a really hard player as a kid. I rode my bike into the walls to feel how it felt. I got tossed off of horses. So I had a lot of just stiffness. But after I learned to ascend, I did the first fear workshop. I drove and took the class in Portland. I lived in Seattle. I was like, oh, okay, well, we'll do this for a while. I kid you not. So I took some time off my yoga classes and then I went back to it. And I was just like, oh, this is going to be so hard to get back into my physical class. I had more flexibility in my body than I had ever had before because of the simple fact that I was releasing stress at a deeper level than all the physical postures in the world can never get you to.
Yeah, and I imagine, and I don't know if you recall this, but I definitely did myself after I learned, that I spent less time, like, distracted while I was doing my yoga.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that, like, less busy mind led also for greater flexibility because I was more present with myself, so I could be like, "Oh, if I just move my, like, hips this way, then all of a sudden there's space, it works," you know? Like,
Right.
that connection was there.
Absolutely. And I mean, I'm still a journey of a human being on my own path, right? And there's still times when I'm not super present. But yet, I have noticed sometimes like the teacher will do something on one side and forget to
Totally
do it
forget.
on the, and nobody notices. Really, do I point it out as she's wrapping up class? I don't want to like nobody seems to care. Just I guess we're just all gonna be lopsided for the rest of our life. But it's funny. So then you're like, room full of 25 people and nobody's noticing. So apparently, we all have a little work to do on being present, but absolutely, and present in our own body helps us not injure ourselves so much too.
Exactly. And then, of course, you can always end the class in, Shavasana, feeling like a master, feeling like a pro, and like you said, it only
Yes.
takes 2.5 days. And after,
Yep.
like, when they're leaving that, they will have the skill to definitely do Shavasana as a master.
Yep. And this practice too, art of ascension, a lot of times people think that meditation has to be painful or difficult. You can do it lying down or you can do it sitting up. And my experience is that people just love it and the time goes by very much quicker than it ever did before. So even if you're somebody who's like, oh, I tried that, that doesn't work, or I'm a high energy person, give it a whirl because you never know. Because I can honestly, I swear to God, I was a very high energy person. My mom literally took me to the emergency room when I was 3 and a half for being calm. She's she's had a concussion. This is listless. This is not she's had a head injury. So I guarantee until you have your own true experience with the real practice of, instruction, not an app, not just trying on your own, give it a whirl.
Yeah. And so if they are ready to, like, just dive
Yeah.
in and take this class, how would they where find out more information about it?
Yeah, well, you can obviously come to me. I love to teach courses. I travel. If it's also in an area where there's other teachers and it's harder to get me for me to get there at that point in time, I can organize a course for you. So you can go to my website, learntoascend.com. You can also Google The Art of Ascension as taught by the Ashayas. You can also read books on it, msibooks.org. And if you do Google it, I usually Google the first sphere, or like I said, just go to learntoascend.com, and I'll get you squared away with the course and you can get started on your own practice.
And if you haven't noticed, that's in the link in the description below this
Oh,
video.
thanks.
So you can just click it and find your way right to Chandika and reach out to her and have her help you get going on this.
Now, I did hear a little bit of a whispering that you also do travel, or is that part of Explore Yoga? Are you offering travel destination things?
Yeah, if you did need some help with your traveling, then you could go to my other site, travelformindbody.com. But you'll also see sometimes there's going to be retreats that are posted on that on my Facebook page there.
Well, I just have to make a small plug because I love to travel, right? So I wouldn't mind doing some destination ascension events, and we can link up to you and have you help us get the travel going, right?
That is a great point. Actually, there's been a few people that were saying that we could, get a place scheduled in like, I don't know, Jamaica or something like that to
Or even
learn.
just like the mountains of Denver, Colorado, or I mean, I love Seattle too, but I guess I'm in an era where I don't personally know anybody. I mean, I remember what back in the day when you had travel agents. I'm smaller scale, so the idea that I would know a human being that could get a group of 10 or 22 people together is pretty exciting.
Yeah.
So thank
And
you.
get deals,
Right.
get deals on
Right.
that.
Right. It's much more fun than pouring over the internet and the website. So I'm excited about that too.
Awesome. So, any last thoughts for our audience before we sign off today?
I'd say enjoy your practice and see where it takes your heart. And if you are looking for something more, I guarantee you there is more. Um, I will say at one point I was on my journey and I was living in New York City for, I think I was there almost 6 months that time. That's right, 6 months. I nannied for my nephew. And I was so proud of myself. I was doing yoga, yoga classes in Manhattan. I have arrived. I'm in New York, baby, doing yoga. I'm not some small Seattleite. And this lady walks up to me, is like, there's a lot more to yoga than just the postures. And she was so like up in my face. And I was just like, what? But yeah, I'm here to offer the same to anybody who might be listening. And if you're doing yoga all the time and you've arrived, I guarantee you there's a lot more.
That's such a great point. And I want you guys all to know that I'm going to have Chandika back because she's got so many great little tidbits to offer. And
Thank you.
if
Thank you.
you like this channel, subscribe, give us a thumbs up. It just helps other people find their way to this information, the more people that do that.
Thank you.
And we look forward to having you back with us again, Chandika.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you.